A quick question here, guys. If I was to take, let's say, a Spirit Halloween Proton Pack and modify that into like a more real Ghostbusters design when it comes to the color scheme and stuff like that, would that be something you guys are interested in? Would you follow along with that? Let me know down below in the comment section, because I just might do that. It was evident from the comment section and all the emails and messages I received, you guys wanted it, so here it is, the Spirit Halloween Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack. Hey everybody, Jason here of GhostbustersNews.com, and as always, Ghostbusters News right here on YouTube, and today our Halloween Countdown 2019 continues as we take a look at the Spirit Halloween Proton Pack, but with some pretty heavy Real Ghostbuster mods from yours truly. Now you're probably asking, you're probably wondering, Jason, why a Real Ghostbusters mod? I mean, that's easy. This year, Spirit Halloween, they released the Ghostbusters jumpsuits, the flight suits. I'm wearing the Peter Venkman one right now. The mannequin behind me is wearing the Egon Spengler one. But the fact that Spirit released these flight suits, but didn't actually release a Proton Pack, I mean, that's a travesty. Hopefully next year. But I'm an impatient man. I decided to take it upon myself to actually do this, and I think it turned out pretty darn good considering while I'm an impatient man, I'm not really a crafty man. Now before I dive into small details about the pack, when it comes to the actual overall like paint I used, it was the Rust-Oleum Painter's Choice brand. Now there's also some pieces on here that were 3D printed. We're gonna get into that here in a second. But for those items, I would also strongly recommend the use of the Rust-Oleum Sandable Primer. Also, for some of the modifications I did on this pack here, I used a lot of this, what is it here, Elmer's wood filler. You apply it, let it set, and then sand it down, and then paint over top of it. Really easy. So before I focus in on some of the smaller details here, let's get a quick once-over of the pack. The biggest thing I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of call in the essence of Real Ghostbusters. And in doing that, I had to modify some pieces of this pack pretty heavily. First and foremost, I removed the crank knob up top, and instead I replaced it with this custom painted gauge. Now the gauge itself I bought from my local Home Depot. I just bought it, took it apart, and painted it to look like something from the Real Ghostbusters. Easy. The real problem though was when I actually removed the crank knob up top, I went in there and I cut around and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I made a mess of it. So much so I actually 3D printed a base for the gauge to actually sit on. That was my first of many headaches with this pack, but I will admit, that headache, 100% my own doing. It was on me. Another one though was this piece right here. Originally, I just painted the clippered valve, kind of this light blue color. Upon doing that, I noticed the paint was starting to spiderweb a little bit, and instead of just like sanding it down and cleaning it up, I decided just to hack the whole thing off. To repair that, I just measured the base and I printed off 2 circles to kind of look like the push button that's on the Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack. Now before I go any further, let me just say all these 3D print files, all these optional pieces here are just that. They're optional. You don't need to do them whatsoever, but I do strongly suggest picking up a 3D printer. 3D printers are no longer $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Well, I mean they are, but entry-level 3D printers you can snag for a couple $100. All the items on this pack were printed using a Ender 3 Pro, which I think is like $250 on Amazon. And I would like to thank Monkaboo Projects. Her YouTube link is right down below in the description there. Click it, check her out. She's pretty much the inspiration. She's the one that talked me into actually buying a 3D printer, so I certainly thank her for this. Another thing you may notice about the pack is I actually rerouted a wire here. There's usually a wire that goes from here up there. Instead, I pretty much made like this little funnel piece that you see in the Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack. Yeah, that's all I did. I pretty much 3D printed like a little funnel, I painted it white, and just attached a clear tube here. It's a small little detail, but once again, I think it just screams Real Ghostbusters, and I love that. You'll also notice that I swapped out all of the wires here, pretty much with all the yellow wires, because when I think about the Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack, I think of blue and I think of yellow. Those are the 2 colors that come to mind for me. The ribbon cable I have here was just a cheap ribbon cable I bought off of eBay. I could have bought a screen accurate Ghostbusters 1 or a Ghostbusters 2 sized down to Spirit Halloween Proton Pack, but I didn't know for sure if they would be 100% like they would actually get here in time for Halloween. And I thought this one was close enough to the Ghostbusters 2 version. And the fact that the Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack didn't even actually have a ribbon cable on it, I debated even putting this in here. But I thought it kind of completed the pack, and being that it was still, you know, a hybrid of Real Ghostbusters in the film, it needed a ribbon cable. Now, one of the last minute additions when it came to the Proton Pack was this iron arm rod here. I initially wasn't going to put a rod on the pack, but I was once again at my local Home Depot, and I came across this thing right here. It is a ball cock float rod. The float rods are usually used for toilets. At least that's what I remember on the packaging. I just saw it honestly, and I was like, this could certainly work for the iron arm rod. And mentioning that, I do want to thank the people over at the Spirit Halloween Pack Owners Facebook group. They kind of gave me the heads up on this piece, so I certainly thank them for that. I also decided to fill up the speaker holes using wood filler. A little sanding, a little bit of primer, a little bit of paint, and those speaker holes are barely noticeable. Also, the lenses on the pack, both right on the cyclotron there and the yellow lens right up there, all those are just translucent school binders, like the really thin ones. And the best part of actually using the translucent kind of colored ones is if you put lights inside the proton pack, the lights will actually still shine through, which is great. Now also, when it comes to the Spirit Halloween proton pack, one thing I had to add was hooks, like actual V-hooks. One for the wand and one for the ghost trap. The V-hook itself was a 3D print printed from a file uploaded to Thingiverse, which I do have in the links down below in the description, so if you want to print one out yourself, you definitely can do so. But if you don't have a 3D printer and you still want to secure these items securely to your Spirit Proton Pack there, you can find like 3D printed or metal V-hooks via like eBay, Etsy, so on and so forth. So it's easy to do. Now at heart, the ghost trap is really just a repaint of the Spirit Halloween one. I didn't really do too much to it. I did 3D print a heightened side plate as well as also a brand new knob for the one side. But like I said, the main actual trap is just a repaint, and of course I kept all the electronics intact, so the trap still functions much like it did out of the box. Now, of course, the biggest add-on, though, to the trap was the fact I actually added a foot pedal here and also a wire coming from it. The connector on the trap is a modified neutrino wand loom coupler. I found it on Thingiverse. Windrake is the maker of it. And once again, I repurposed it as a trap attachment with a few minor modifications. I then ran a yellow cable, which gives me such an old school Real Ghostbusters Kinner vibe, to this 3D printed Real Ghostbusters foot pedal. Now I got the file for this from a user over at Tinkercad. If you'd like to print one of these out for yourself there, we've got that little link down below in the description for you. And to date, I think this is the best looking 3D printed item I've ever put together. I printed it, of course I primed it, I sanded it, I primed it again, I sanded it again, I filled in some gaps, but eventually it came out looking just like I wanted it to. I love this thing. Now talking about the pedal and also the actual cable here, I did also install a little hook on the side of the proton pack as seen in the Real Ghostbusters animated series. All this was just a wall hook I found on Thingiverse.com. Once again, I slightly modified it to kind of fit my needs for the Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack, sanded it, primed it, painted it, and added it to the Proton Pack. Now moving on from the ghost trap here, next we're going to talk about the wand itself. And I must admit, I kind of phoned in the wand. Once I get my hands on some files for a 3D print like accurate animated Real Ghostbusters wand, I'm going to print that, I'm going to add it to the pack. So for the time being, this is just kind of temporary, but I did add some things that, once again, I wanted to make it very, RGB centric. And one of the first things you're going to notice is this button on top. I pretty much filled in everything on the top of the wand here itself, and then I 3D printed this button. Because to me, one of the first things you think of when you think of the Real Ghostbusters wand is that big yellow button they have on the very top of it. Also, being that is the Real Ghostbusters color scheme, I love the way the actual handles turned out here, with the contrast between the blue and then the light brown. There are a few little details on the actual wand that I've yet to finish, but I did want to get this video out in time for Halloween. I'll most likely just use my Cricut vinyl cutter and just add some small little details here and there, and I think that'll help the wand pop a little more. And being that this was a Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack, I needed this blue missile tip piece here right at the end. The yellow piece that's attaching it here, that's just a circular long cylinder I made in a 3D print program. It's easy to do, but the actual main tip piece came from a user once again over on Thingiverse. His name was Ping Pong Donkey, quite the name, and he uploaded a Real Ghostbusters Proton Pack, but the big thing with that was the size was made for action figures. So I upscaled the thing crazy large, sliced it off, and just cut off the tip portion here. Now when it came to attaching the wire here to the proton wand, once again Windrake's files came in handy. I did make some slight modifications to the coupler so it will actually take this specific wiring here. And when it comes to actually the wire, the tube that I used here, I am debating about changing it to maybe something a little bit thicker, but right now I'm digging it. I like how, once again, the tubing from the trap, the tubing from here, both yellow, once again, gives me that Real Ghostbusters Kinner action figure toy vibe. And that's what I was going for. I was kind of going for a mixture between the movie, the animated series, and the original Kinner toy line. And I think I nailed it with this. Now I also attached the Proton Pack to a motherboard, which also in turn is attached to an Alice frame. The pack itself is attached via just simple zip ties, because of course the Spirit Halloween Proton Pack is pretty darn light, even with the ghost trap added onto it. And I'm looking at maybe swapping out the zip ties for actual screws later down the road, once I add some spacers to kind of give the proton pack a little bit more depth. And the motherboard I'm using, it was simple to do. It was just cut by me. All I did was trace out the proton pack, I cut out the actual frame, primed it, painted it, and here we are. Now the brackets I used to attach the motherboard to the actual pack were 3D printed as well. If you want to grab those, we've got another link down below in the description for you. Now as it stands right now, the pack itself has no lights or sounds. I am looking at getting a light and sound kit over the next couple months and adding it into it. And actually, I shouldn't say it doesn't have sounds, because I did install a Bluetooth speaker on the inside, allowing me to bump the Ghostbusters soundtracks, as well as also classic tunes from the Real Ghostbusters. Now one thing I've not done yet is actually wear the pack all suited up in my Real Ghostbusters attire. So give me a second here, guys. This is what I've been waiting weeks for. I'm excited for it. Let's throw this proton pack on my back. Alright guys, who's ready for Halloween? I think I'm ready for Halloween. Proton pack is on my back. Of course, I've got some of these items I've been collecting over the past year or so. 3D printed PKA meter right here, 3D printed Real Ghostbusters belt gizmo, the Spirit Halloween web belt that I dyed, obviously the Peter Venkman flight suit from Spirit Halloween, and now the nearly completed Real Ghostbusters proton pack on my back. And I love the look of this thing. I think it came together to make one heck of a costume, one heck of a uniform, a Real Ghostbusters uniform. And I would like to thank everybody out there. I'd like to thank my Patreons who followed along with this build, all the exclusive photos and some of the videos we uploaded. You guys mean the world to me. Also the 20,000 plus YouTube subscribers right here on the Ghostbusters News channel. I can't believe we just hit 20,000. Of course, all of our followers on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, everybody that checks out our main site, the website where all the magic happens, ghostbustersnews.com. I thank every single one of you. The ideas, the concepts I received about how to do this pack, things I could do to like make it a little bit better, how to tweak it here and there. I got so much input from the community, and honestly, I'm the type of guy that if something goes wrong, I'll just like say screw it, I'll throw it away. And so many things went wrong with this pack and making it, but it was because I held myself accountable. I was updating once again my Patreons. I was posting occasionally to social media about this pack. I couldn't let it die. I had to keep going, and I'm so glad I did, because once again, I love the near finished product here. So guys, if you'd like to mod your very own Spirit Halloween proton pack into the Real Ghostbusters, into maybe more of a movie accurate one, into the video game pack, maybe that'll be an upcoming build, who knows. We've got a link right down below in the description. Click it, buy your own Spirit Halloween proton pack, and in the process, if you do want to get a little bit more real, you can buy these Real Ghostbusters jumpsuits, flight suits. Once again, link down below in the description. Shop Spirit Halloween today. And that is all I've got for you here, guys. I will see you right back here next time at ghostbustersnews.com, and as always, Ghostbusters News right here on YouTube.
These things are real. These men are consummate snowball artists. These things are real.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
These things are real. People think they're seeing ghosts. I have seen shit that'll turn you white.
I ain't afraid of no ghosts.